Winter ruled the northern estate like a strict monarch. Snow lay heavy on the black iron gates, on the pine trees lining the drive, on the long fur coats of the guests who arrived one by one in sleek cars. Inside the ancestral house, chandeliers glowed warmly, reflecting off marble floors and gilded mirrors that had witnessed generations of power, alliances, and carefully arranged marriages. She stood at the center of it all, fingers slightly numb, not from the cold, but from the weight of the moment. In Russia, tradition mattered, bloodlines mattered, and tonight her future would be decided not by whispers but by choice. The three brothers waited across the hall. The eldest was impossibly handsome, with fair hair and the easy confidence of a man who had never been refused. He smiled as if he already owned tomorrow. The second was darker, sharper, his eyes calculating, his charm deliberate and dangerous. Murmurs followed him wherever he went. And then there was the third. He stood a little apart, dressed in black, broad-shouldered and silent. A sheikh by title, a foreigner by blood, yet bound to this powerful Russian family by oath and history. His face was hidden behind a matte black mask, smooth, expressionless, unreadable. No one spoke of why he wore it. They simply accepted it, the way one accepts a locked door in a familiar house. Her heart should have leaned toward the obvious choices. Everyone expected it to. She could feel their gazes pressing against her back, urging her toward beauty, toward ease, toward safety. But when she looked at the masked man, the room seemed to quiet. He did not try to impress her. He did not smile or step forward. He waited, still as the snow outside the windows. There was something unsettling in that restraint and something honest. In a world of performances, he offered none. The silence stretched. At last she moved. Her heels echoed sharply against the marble as she crossed the hall, past the first brother's confident smile, past the second's narrowed eyes. She stopped in front of the masked sheikh. Gasps rippled through the room. "I choose him," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of doubt inside her. The masked man inclined his head slowly, deeply, in a gesture of respect rather than triumph. For just a moment she thought she felt his gaze, intense, measuring, almost protective through the mask. Outside, the wind howled louder, as if Russia itself had noticed that fate had just changed course. The wedding unfolded beneath crystal chandeliers and centuries of expectation. Snow continued to fall outside, thick and relentless, pressing against the tall windows as if trying to witness what history was being rewritten within. Inside, the music was restrained, classical strings, slow and ceremonial, matching the mood of the room. This was not a celebration of passion, but of power, legacy, and irreversible choice. She wore ivory silk trimmed with old lace, the kind reserved for women whose lives were never meant to be ordinary. As she walked beside him, she became acutely aware of the contrast between them. Her face was bare, exposed to every gaze. His remained hidden behind the black mask, unchanged even now. It neither glittered nor softened in the warm light. It absorbed attention and gave nothing back. Whispers followed them like shadows. Why would she choose the masked one? What does he hide? Does she know? He offered his arm, firm and steady. When she took it, she felt the quiet strength beneath his tailored coat. He moved with discipline, each step deliberate, as if he had rehearsed restraint his entire life. If he noticed the stares, he did not react. If he sensed the tension, he carried it without complaint. The vows were spoken in calm, formal tones. His voice was low, controlled, carrying a faint accent that reminded everyone. He was not entirely Russian and yet somehow more disciplined than any of them. When it came time to lift the veil, he did so with reverence, as though acknowledging not possession, but responsibility. Still the mask remained. At the banquet, gold-rimmed glasses clinked softly. Toasts were raised, polite and cautious. The brothers watched from across the table. The eldest tight-lipped, the second unreadable. She felt their disappointment like a chill despite the roaring fireplaces. When the night deepened, tradition finally granted them privacy. Their chamber was vast, heavy with dark wood and velvet curtains. Candlelight flickered against the walls, casting long shadows that made the room feel timeless. She stood near the window, watching snow spiral downward, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. He remained near the door, respectful, distant. "You may ask," he said quietly. She turned to him. "Ask what?" "About the mask." She studied him for a long moment, then shook her head. "Not tonight. Something shifted in the air, surprise, perhaps gratitude. He inclined his head slightly. That night, nothing more was taken than silence and trust. He slept at a careful distance as though guarding an invisible line. As she drifted into sleep, she realized something unexpected. For the first time, she felt safe, not because she knew him, but because he had chosen patience over power. Outside, Russia slept beneath snow and secrets, unaware that the most dangerous truths were still waiting to be revealed. They traveled north, far from the city and its watchful eyes, to a secluded estate near the frozen forests, land owned by the family for generations, a place where even rumors rarely dared to wander. The road disappeared beneath layers of snow, and the world narrowed to white fields, dark fir trees, and the low hum of the engine cutting through silence. Here, Russia felt ancient and absolute. The house awaited them like a patient guardian. Stone walls, narrow windows, smoke rising from chimneys into a pale winter sky. Inside, the air was warm and scented faintly with pine, wax, and honeyed tea. No servants lingered nearby, no brothers, no audience. Only the quiet weight of being alone together for the first time. Days passed slowly. Mornings began with pale light slipping through frost-covered glass. Evenings ended by the fire, where shadows danced and time seemed to stretch. He spoke more here, though still sparingly, about the land, about winters that taught endurance, about loyalty that survived distance and silence. He never spoke of himself directly. And always the mask remained. She noticed the way he removed his gloves with care, the faint hesitation before entering a room where the light was stronger. She noticed how people, when they passed them in the nearby village, looked twice, first at her, then at him, curiosity mixing with recognition, respect, fear. On the fourth night, the stillness felt different. Outside, snow fell softly, endlessly. Inside, lantern light warmed the room, turning the wood walls amber. He stood near the hearth, his back to the fire, the mask casting a sharp shadow across his face. She felt it then, the moment approaching like a held breath. "This place," he said quietly, "is beyond obligation." She understood what he meant. No witnesses, no expectations. He raised his hands slowly to the edges of the mask. For the first time, there was hesitation in his movements, not fear but gravity. "This is where many turn away," he said. "I will not stop you if you do." Her heart thudded once hard. She did not move. The mask came away in silence. She froze. Not because of horror, not because of disappointment, but because the man revealed was more real than the legend. A scar traced his cheek, pale and deliberate, not disfiguring but defining. His eyes, clear, steady, painfully honest, held years of discipline, sacrifice, and choices made in darkness so others could remain untouched by it. This was not a man who had hidden weakness. This was a man who had carried consequences. The fire crackled behind him. The world did not end. It simply became clearer. She took a step forward, breath shallow, understanding blooming slowly, irresistibly. In that frozen northern silence, she realized she had never truly chosen blindly at all. Morning arrived quietly, as it always did in the north, without ceremony, without warmth. Pale light seeped through the frost-laced windows, settling over the room like a vow whispered rather than spoken aloud. The fire had burned down to embers, and the estate lay wrapped in stillness, the kind of silence only Russia seemed capable of holding. He stood by the window, unmasked, watching the forest. Without the black barrier, his presence felt different, no less powerful but more human. The scar on his face caught the light, tracing the history she had only just begun to comprehend. He did not turn when she stirred, as if granting her space to choose again. She rose slowly and crossed the cold floor toward him. "You didn't hide because you were ashamed," she said, her voice soft but certain. He exhaled, a breath he had perhaps been holding for years. "I hid because people see scars before they see intent." Outside, snow slid from the branches in soft avalanches. The world continued, indifferent to revelations. She reached out, fingers brushing his cheek. Not the scar first, but the warmth of living skin. He flinched barely, then allowed it. That single moment of permission felt heavier than any vow spoken in the grand halls of Moscow. "In Russia," she said almost to herself, "we are taught to endure, to keep our faces calm and our truths locked away." He finally looked at her then. His eyes were steady, but vulnerable in a way the mask had never allowed. "Endurance is only useful when someone understands what it costs." They spoke then, not in confessions, but in fragments. He told her of loyalty sworn too young, of violence taken on so others could remain untouched, of a life shaped by responsibility rather than desire. She told him of expectations that dressed themselves as privilege, of choices that were never meant to feel like freedom. There was no dramatic promise, no sudden declaration of love. Instead, there was something quieter and far more dangerous, mutual recognition. Later, they stepped outside together. The cold bit sharply, but the sky was clear, endless blue stretching over white land. She slipped her gloved hand into his, and this time he did not hesitate. The mask lay forgotten inside, resting on a wooden table, powerless now. As they walked through the snow, she understood that Russia had shaped them both, teaching silence, strength, and survival. But here, in this vast, unforgiving land, they had chosen something rarer than passion. They had chosen truth. And in a country built on endurance, that choice was nothing short of revolutionary.